On today's episode of Empowering Women in Real Estate, the podcast, we're going to be talking about the intangibles.
Hi, I'm Karen Cooper, a wife, mom of three, real estate broker, team owner, and founder of Empowering Women in Real Estate. As a realtor, I've personally helped well over 700 families in my career, and now I help thousands of women from all across the country balance real life and real estate through daily inspiration, motivation, and actionable plans to increase their success. Listen in as I share stories and tips from my life and business and interview some of my favorite people.
Hi there, I'm glad you're here for today's episode. So I want to talk to you today about the intangibles, and this is actually my presentation from our 2025, our fifth annual Empowering Women in Real Estate conference. And so I've done this for the last couple of years. For a couple of years, we actually used to pay, and it was actually really expensive, a company to record and live stream our conference. And we loved doing that. We loved offering that and being able to offer a virtual ticket, but it was unfortunately just really cost prohibitive, and it just wasn't something that we could continue to do and keep the conference ticket prices reasonable. And so one of the things that I have done now for the last couple of years is I have shared my presentation with everyone on a podcast episode afterwards. And here's how I do it. So, and you heard me talk about this again a little bit last week too. I never do anything one time. And in fact, if you listen to our system series last week, in one of the systems, I talked about this exact thing that I'm doing right here, which is, anytime I'm speaking, I'm doing a presentation. The first time that I'm doing it, and I'll sometimes do the same presentation more than once at different things, but the first time I do it, I actually record myself podcast style. So exactly the same way that I normally record podcast episodes, the same way that I'm recording this intro for you right now. I follow that same process and record myself doing the presentation that I'm going to be doing for whatever presentation I'm doing. And so then what I do is, as I'm, driving around, working around my house, doing whatever I'm doing, leading up to that event day, I will listen to myself doing that presentation over and over again. And so it really helps me to practice. It helps me to stay in the zone. It helps me, it's part of my rehearsal of what I do for speaking. And so what I do then, because we don't record the presentations at the conference, is I share with you my rehearsal. So if you've ever listened to one of these episodes before, you'll know that it's not perfect because this is my practice. I'm doing a practice run of the presentation, and that's what you're going to be hearing. And so that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. My presentation this year for the conference was about the intangibles. And here's the thing, and this was sparked from some conversations earlier this year, and we actually did this as a training for my real estate team back over the summer. Is there's a lot of skills that are continuously taught in the real estate industry, and skills that we need to have, right? Understanding the contract, scripts, how to negotiate, how to market. There's a lot of very tangible skills that you see taught. There's courses on them, there's classes, there's webinars, what have you. But then there's the intangibles. There's these little things you can't necessarily put your finger on it. Like, think about some of the most successful agents that people in your office, people that you've done transactions with. Yes, they're good at the skills, but there's also some other little factors that, intangibles are not taught. I don't know anybody, I've not seen these taught anywhere. I do my best to teach them through this presentation, but there's these little things that make a difference, that set the highest producers, the most successful agents apart from the others. And so that is what the intangibles is all about. It's 10 things. I think it could actually probably be more than 10, but there's 10 intangibles that I identified for this presentation. And so that's what you're going to hear today. What you're going to hear next is you're going to hear my practice, my rehearsal of my presentation on the intangibles. and I'd love to know what you think of it. So come message me. I'm on Instagram at karen.w.cooper. And until next time, stay well.
So what I'm here to talk to you about today is the intangibles. So let me ask you if this sounds familiar to you. You have A-plus customer service skills. You go to all the trainings, you study the paperwork, you know the contract backwards and forwards. You memorize the scripts, you do all the things, but have you ever felt like that still wasn't enough to have consistent success in your real estate business? What is it that sets the strongest top producers apart from the rest? It's something called the intangibles, and it's the missing link. The intangibles are, if you think about it, think about what an intangible is. It's that little something that you can't quite put your finger on. You can have all the skills and the scripts and the systems, but you can still struggle to have that consistent, stable business. And I have found that the difference between doing well and standing out really lies within the intangibles. And the intangibles is a set of things like mindsets, habits, ways of showing up that can't really be taught in a class. That I've never attended anything or heard anything where anybody has taught this or talked about this before. But they really do make all the difference. And so today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you the top 10 intangibles that the absolute best agents in our industry embody to set them above the rest. But first, what is an intangible? What's the definition of an intangible? An intangible is an adjective, and it is something that is unable to be touched or grasped, not having a physical presence. So, again, it's that little thing that you can't quite put your finger on. I remember when I first started in real estate 23 years ago, my team leader used to call it it. Someone would have it, and it's something that, you can't necessarily teach. I don't know anybody who really tries to teach that. You can't, it can be kind of hard to put your finger on it, but it's definitely a difference. And if you think about that as I'm describing this right now, you're probably already thinking about some agents that friends, colleagues, agents in your market that are very successful, that have that it factor, that you notice that they have that kind of it thing going on. And they can be really hard to pinpoint. They can be hard to teach. I'm going to do my best to do so today, but they really are essential. So let's go through them. The first one is speed. And so what do I mean by speed? Success favors those who move quickly. How fast you respond to leads, how fast you make decisions, how fast you implement ideas. Literally nothing will kill your motivation, your momentum, or your path to success quite like overthinking. And I can imagine that a lot of you are overthinkers. I'm an overthinker. I struggle with overthinking from time to time too. And you notice if you are somebody who struggles with that, it shuts you down. It shuts down your motivation. It shuts down your momentum. And so speed is really one of those things, you hear about it talked about a lot about, I think it was, who was it? I heard a podcast episode. Gosh, I can picture her, but I can't think of her name. There was Cody Sanchez, who was talking about how speed with businesses and getting businesses off the ground, that, you just have to go. You just have to get started, and you're going to figure out the how. We talked about this a lot recently in our Midlife Real Estate Blueprint. The how gets figured out as you go. And some of the how, it's impossible to even know when you're starting. When I think about when we started our real estate team, there were so many things that we didn't know, and it was going to be impossible for us to know because we didn't have experience in this. We had to start. We literally had to just start and then shift and make changes along the way as we went. I want to talk a second about leads. And, obviously that's a big part of our biggest part of our business. And, responding quickly to a lead really can make the difference between landing that client or missing that or losing them, right? So fast follow-up, it builds trust and it shows professionalism. But here's where I think the disconnect is with a lot of agents when it comes to speed is there's a thought of speed to lead, right? You've probably heard that before. But really, I think what you should focus on is speed to response, because here's what I have noticed, and I have been guilty of this myself. Here's what I have noticed happens a lot with agents and leads. You get a lead, either it's passed to you from your broker or your team leader, or it's somebody calls in on your listing, leaves a message. Maybe you get a text message from somebody who, was referred to you by someone else. And if you're in the middle of something, right? Let's say you're in the middle of an appointment, or you're at a doctor's appointment, or you're driving in the car, picking up your kids from school, whatever it is, a lot of times we're not at a spot where we can really have a good conversation. Like you're driving from showing to showing. You're not in a place where you can really, have that quality conversation that you would like to have. So what happens? You wait to call them back. You wait to respond to the text. You wait to respond to the email until you have time to give it your full attention. And I think sometimes in our mind, we think that we're really doing a good thing by doing that, because we really want to give this person the respect that they deserve by making sure that we are, at a spot where we can really pay attention. But the problem is we're busy, and maybe you forget, and maybe hours go by before you remember that call or that text message, or, whatever the appointment is that you're in, or whatever, a couple of hours go by. Really, the focus should be speed to response. And it can be a really quick text. It could be a really quick email back, but something to say, I just wanted to let you know that I got your message. I am really looking forward to talking to you. I'm on another appointment right now. I'm heading to another appointment right now, or whatever. I just wanted to let you know that I got the message, and I'm going to give you a call back at whatever time, right? Set some kind of an expectation for when you're going to be, calling the back or responding more fully, or whatever the resolution of that is. And you will be amazed at how that will change the energy of that interaction. One, you're getting back to them quickly. So, if you send a message to someone, this happens to me all the time. You send a message to a business. A couple weeks ago, I sent an email to a business from their website. It's been 2 weeks. They still haven't responded to me. When they don't respond, within whatever in your mind is a reasonable period of time, what are your assumptions? You assume, well, maybe they're out of business, or maybe they're too busy. They don't, have time to help me. And so within very short order, they're going to find somebody else to call. So if you can have that speed to response and just say, hey, I just wanted to let you know, I got the message, and I'm going to set the expectation for whenever you're going to follow up. And then not only that, when you do that, when you set the expectation for when you're going to follow up, hey, I'm going to give you a call in about 2 hours or whatever it is, and then you follow through on that, now you have built trust. Because you set an expectation and then you followed through on that expectation, and you're also showing professionalism. And so that's a huge one. And so the takeaway for this one is you really want to get into the habit of taking quick, decisive action on whatever it is, whether it's a speed to response, whether it's launching a new marketing campaign, whether it's something that you're trying to do in your business, a new lead generation tactic, or whatever it is. Get in the habit of taking quick action, decisive action, and then tweak as you go. The number 2 intangible is network or community. And here's what I found about the most successful agents. They have strong relationships. They have a strong network. They have a strong community of people. And, if you think about it, relationships are everything, especially in our business. Think about it. Relationships in so many different ways. Relationships from the point of view of maybe it's other agents in your office, right? Other agents in your office, colleagues, people that you can call on for things like vacation coverage, or helping you with a showing, or agents in other markets that you can trust for your referrals. Maybe it is the relationships with your vendors. There's so many different vendors that we work through, that we work with in the course of a transaction. And the stronger those relationships are, the better, right? The better service your clients get, the faster service, the better service you get. And so the best producers tend to have really strong networks and communities. And then not only that, the people that you surround yourself with, They can open doors for you. And I don't mean the literal, opening of the door. Of course, that is also possible when it comes to sales or transactions. But they can open doors in terms of opportunities for you, right? They can make referrals. They can provide support. I'm sure you've heard it a lot of times. You are the sum of the people that you spend the most time with. If the majority of your time is spent with people who are doing less business than you, people who maybe don't have the same drive or types of goals that you do, or maybe it's people who are largely very negative, before too long, your pace is going to match their pace, right? Instead of being positive, you're going to be thinking negatively. And instead of setting big goals, maybe you're going to start setting smaller goals. And if you've read the book Atomic Habits, the author talks about this a lot. He talks about it with regards to like smoking, right? If you are in a group of friends and everyone but you smokes, in time, statistically, there's been lots of studies, you will eventually become a smoker, right? And so you are the sum of the people that you spend the most time with. And so that's why you really have to think very carefully about that. As an agent, having a really strong referral network, past clients, other agents, business partners, it fuels your business. It fuels repeat business. It fuels opportunities. It fuels growth. When I think about the people that I know, the network that I've built, the community of people that I have that is comprised of all of those things, right? Clients, other business owners in my local community, my business partners in terms of vendors and other agents that I work with, I have been very blessed to have built a very robust community. And I really like being the resource of the resource. And it is unusual when someone reaches out to me, and people reach out to me all the time. It is unusual when somebody reaches out to me and says, hey, I'm looking for this particular type of service provider, or I'm looking for an agent in this particular area. It's unusual when I don't have a resource for them. And it's because I've been able to build such a strong network. And so something that I would like for you to think about is think about who are the top 3 people in your world who have helped your business the most. And, one of the things that I have found and truly believe is these don't necessarily have to be people that you've met. When I think about my career in the 23 years that I've been in business and all that I've built and all that I've done, Brian Buffini, who I know a lot of you know, I've never met in person. I've been to his events, but I've never met him in person. But he has been one of the single greatest impacts on my real estate career because I have followed his programs religiously. I have attended his events. I have read his books. I have listened to his podcast. What he teaches and what he does really resonates with me. And so I have invested a lot of time in following him, learning from him. And so, those top 3 people in your world, especially maybe if you're in a place where, and I was talking to an agent last week, if you're in a place where you're surrounded by people that aren't dreaming as big as you are and maybe don't want the same things that you are, you can find those people. They don't necessarily have to be right in front of you. They can be people that you maybe have yet to meet or will maybe never meet. I will never meet Brian Buffini, I'm sure, but they can be a big part of your business. So think about who the top 3 people are that have helped your business. And then think about how are you nurturing those relationships, right? If they're people that are in your world, how often are you connecting with them? Are you going to lunch once a quarter? Do you have a little quick phone call every now and then? If it's somebody that you haven't met, somebody who's not part of your world, how often are you pouring their stuff in, right? How often are you listening to their podcasts? How often are you reading their books or during their trainings? I used to listen to Brian Buffini's, I would have these CDs, this is how long ago this was, in my car from these, I forget what he called it, but it was like a monthly something that he sent out to his coaching clients. And my first team leader was one of his coaching clients. And so she would let me have them and I carried them in my car. And as I drove from appointment to appointment all day, every day, I listened to these things over and over and over again. So how often are you nurturing those relationships and learning from those top 3 people? Number 3 is a little more tactical, and it's being direct and clear. And so what that means is, communicating clearly eliminates confusion it sets expectations, and it establishes authority. And, when you think about when I would go on an appointment and I would meet with a client and, a listing appointment or whatever it is, there was no confusion. It was very clear that I was in charge, right? I was driving the bus, as they say, but still obviously very much in a respectful form, taking input from the client. But it was clear that, I was experienced. I knew what I was talking about. And because I was communicating so clearly and so directly, that was very obvious. And so, whether it's client communications, client conversations to negotiations, to your marketing, anytime you have clarity around your communication, clarity builds confidence and it minimizes misunderstandings. Your clients expect you to lead. They're not calling you because they want to call the shots. I mean, we all know that we've all had the ones that are like that. But for the most part, they're calling you because they don't know how to do this by themselves. They don't want to do this by themselves. So they're calling you. They expect you to lead. And, you can still have really confident conversations, as they say, like no fluff conversations, while also hearing their concerns and also being empathetic. But you're not really fully doing your job if you're not communicating directly and clear. Here is a little script that I have probably used and said more than anything, besides maybe the word consistency, more than anything in my real estate business. And it's this, think about it when you're talking to your seller and you're trying to negotiate a price adjustment, or you're working with your buyer and they want to negotiate in one certain way, which is really kind of against what you're seeing makes sense from a comps perspective or with what's happening in the market or whatever it is, right? So this is what I would say, some version of this. It's your decision, and I'm going to work really hard to make XYZ, whatever it is that you want, happen for you. But I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you blank, right? It's your decision, and I'm going to work really hard to get this offer accepted, even though it is $100,000 less than the list price, and there are 3 other offers. But I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't tell you that you're not going to get a second chance. And those other offers are going to be more than yours. And so if you really want this home, you're going to need to do something different. It's your decision, but I'm just letting you know this is the situation, right? And so what I have found is that when I would use that language, and especially when I would say it's your decision, but there's kind of a disarming, right? I hear you. I'm going to work really hard for what you want, but I'm the professional and I need to tell you, I need to make sure that you understand that this is more appropriate. And this is, if this is what you want, I'm going to do that. I'm going to do what you want. But you need to know that, it should really be this. And so I often found that when I would use that, and then often we would be able to come to a different conclusion that worked a little better. So, and the other thing that I would say when it comes to being direct and clear as an intangible is it also applies to your vision and your purpose in your business. And I find that a lot of agents are basically living the same year in their business over and over again, forever and ever, amen. How happy would you be to repeat 2025 again next year? And then again the year after that, and then again the year after that. If it wasn't a great year, I'm sure you wouldn't be very happy to do so. If it was a great year, you might be happy to do so, but you would maybe want to do even more. Or maybe you need some help to do what it is that you were doing. Or maybe you want to work in a different way. The more clear you can be about what your vision is for your business and what your purpose is in your business, the easier it is, the better it is. Are you trying to build something that is long-term and sustainable in your real estate business? Or are you just trying to get through whatever the deal is that's right in front of you? I'll never forget when I was a managing broker and I was trying to help one of my agents who came to me, and she was very upset. And there was a problem with the transaction. And I can't remember if she represented the seller or the buyer. I don't remember, but I do remember that the argument was about a stove. And it was about to go to closing. And at that time, and this is a very long time ago, I think the cost was going to be like $300-$400. And technically it wasn't her problem. She didn't do anything wrong, but they had reached an impasse. And here we are at the day of settlement, and everybody is fighting tooth and nail. So she had an opportunity to, and raise your hand if you've done this. I have done this myself. She had an opportunity to buy the stove, give the credit for the stove, and be the hero and wrap it up and get it done. But she was unwilling to do so. She was trying to suck every penny out of that transaction, and instead spent and wasted hours and hours of time, her clients, in frustration, fighting over something that could have been solved in 2 minutes.
6 years ago, when I began shifting away from serving clients myself, but still producing a high level of volume and income, I wish there had been a model or a blueprint to follow. And that's why I've created the Midlife Real Estate Blueprint. It's the next step for experienced women in real estate who want to keep the income and change the way they work. Inside this program, you'll redesign your role, install simple, repeatable systems, and create margin for what matters to you while staying highly productive. We have 2 programs now available, a 5-week live program with coaching and community, or a self-paced edition that you can start anytime. When you're ready, visit empoweringwomeninrealestate.com and click on Midlife Real Estate Blueprint.
I remember it happened to me. I had a listing, and my seller, even though we'd had the conversation, it was in the listing paperwork, it was clear in the contract, they took the washer and dryer, even though they weren't supposed to take the washer and dryer. And it had been such a frustrating transaction. And all the way through, it had been fight, one thing after another. And here we were, day of settlement, walkthrough happens, washer and dryer is gone. The buyer and the buyer's agent are very upset, reasonably so. It's going to be about $800 to replace this washer and dryer. And I was livid. And because I was so frustrated with the seller, because this was just one in a series of issues that we'd had, initially I started fighting. And I was, think about it. Have you done this? I was starting to fight back with them. You got to do this. This is wrong. And then a little switch flipped in my brain. And I was like, you know what? This is not worth my time. This is not worth my energy. Like, the amount of time and energy that I'm going to have to spend to fight, and they still probably won't do the right thing that they're supposed to do per the contract. Or I can solve this right now in 5 minutes and hand over, an $800 Home Depot gift card, and it's done. Settlement happens. Buyer's happy. Seller, I don't care if they're happy. And we're moving on. And that's what I did. So think about that. Are you trying to build something long-term with your business, or are you just trying to get through the singular deal? And that makes a huge difference. 4th intangible is consistency. This is my favorite word. Consistency, what it means is that small actions done daily beat big actions done occasionally. That is the hill that I will die on. Consistency builds momentum and credibility. There are so many books on this topic. Atomic Habits, Slight Edge, the power of, can't remember, the compound effect. Like, there's so many that have been written, studies about this. There's so much more power in the consistency versus, something big that you do every now and then. I promise you that consistency is the answer to every single problem that you have. If you are struggling with your weight and you would like to lose a few pounds, or you want to feel a little healthier, consistently moving, consistently eating certain things is going to solve that problem. If you don't have enough money at the end of the month to pay your bills, what is it that they say? There's more month remaining at the end of the month than there is money, or something like that. The solution is consistent prospecting, generating more consistent leads, which leads to generating more consistent business, which leads to more consistent commissions, right? Consistency is the solution. It doesn't matter what your problem is. consistency is the answer. And I feel like a lot of the highest producers know this. There are things that they do consistently, and it may not be, it can be a small thing that doesn't seem to maybe make sense, or you don't necessarily recognize it, as a big difference maker. But it is. It's the smallest thing sometimes. There have been a lot of stories about people like Steve Jobs was one of them, like these really high level executives, and they wear the same outfit every single day. And, that's consistency, of course. They eat the same meals every single day. They eat the same breakfast every single day. They eat the same thing for lunch. And part of that with that consistency is it eliminates decisions, right? It eliminates decision fatigue. We only have so much energy to make so many decisions in our day. And when you spend so much time on the little decisions that aren't really that important in the scheme of things, then you no longer have the energy or the stamina for the big decisions. And so when you can be consistent about whatever, I talk about it with my prospecting. I consistently prospect every Monday morning. I block the time on Monday morning. It's the first thing I do when I sit down at my desk, because I know that that's what I'm going to do. I don't have to think about it. I just know that when I sit down, that is the first thing that I do. And it's that consistency. And because of that, I have had a very consistent real estate career for more than 2 decades. When it comes to, showing up in your business, prospecting, following up with leads, delivering great service, literally everything, it's about consistency. And that is how trust and business are built, is through that consistency. I love this quote from Les Brown. If you do what is hard, your life will be easy. If you do what is easy, your life will be hard. And, I think sometimes we're not consistent because it can be hard, right? It's hard to consistently take that walk every day. It's hard to prioritize doing your prospecting every week or every day. These things it can be hard, right? And when you avoid the hard things and you do what's easy instead, which is, well, I'm not going to prospect today, and then I'll do it tomorrow, and then it doesn't happen tomorrow, and then it doesn't happen tomorrow, and then before you know it, the week is over and it hasn't happened again, right? Then your life is hard. Your business is hard because you don't have any business. But when you do what is hard, you commit to that consistent prospecting every week, every day, whatever your rhythm is, then your life will be easy. Your business will be easier anyway, because the business will consistently come to you because you are consistently seeking it and you are consistently doing the actions to get that business. And here's the thing about consistency. Whether you like it or not, you are being consistent. You are either consistently doing the right things that make your life and your business better, or you are consistently not doing them, which makes your life harder. So you're being consistent one way or the other. You decide what kind of consistency you want to have. Number 5 is setting expectations. When people know what to expect, they feel confident and secure. If you have children, you have certainly seen this. It reduces frustration and it increases satisfaction. And, you're going to hear this too when you hear from Jerica this afternoon. Setting expectations is so critical because then the client knows what to expect. And then you're also able to build trust because then you're able to follow through on that. You set the expectation and then you follow through on the expectation. And then every time you do that, you're building trust with them. Oh, she said she was going to do this and then she did this. So then they start to really trust you. So whatever it is, whether it's setting timelines, communication expectations, outlining the process for this is how I work with buyers. This is how I work with sellers. Whatever your individual process is, it makes for a much smoother client experience. And here's the thing. Not only does it make for a much smoother experience from the client's point of view, but it also makes for a much smoother experience for you. When you clearly set the expectations and the client knows what to expect, it cuts down on the number of phone calls that you get. It cuts down on the questions that you get. It solves a lot of those issues because you've established the expectation. So they know and it's clear. Also, setting expectations is also it's the same as setting boundaries. And so you need to know what boundaries you need for wherever you are in your life Are you in a phase of life where you are in that, so many of us have been in that sandwich generation where you've still got kids at home that you've taken care of, but you also have older parents that you're taking care of. Plus you got a business that you're trying to run. Do you have young children at home and you are running your business in addition to, volunteering in classrooms and going on the field trip and going to the Little League games and all of those things? Whatever it is that is for you, you need to understand what boundaries are important to you, what boundaries make sense for your business, and then you have to have the discipline to hold them. It doesn't help to set a boundary and say, oh, you know what, unless I'm negotiating a contract, I don't take any calls after 8 p.m. at night. But then when somebody texts you at 10 o'clock, you respond. That doesn't help. You have to have the discipline to hold the boundary. And here's the thing about boundaries. Having boundaries does not make you mean or unreasonable. It means that you value your life. You only get to do this once, and you can't be everything to everyone and nothing to yourself. If somebody doesn't understand a boundary that you have, that's on them, and they're just not your people. So here's your permission to set some boundaries. Number 6, intangibles, is reputation. I really enjoyed hearing a lot about this from my friend Keith Barrett, who is an attorney at Vesta Settlements. He presented on this earlier this year, and he was talking about reputation. And, your reputation is your brand. And it's what people say about you when you're not in the room. And the highest producers, the best producers, their reputation precedes them. And for you, your reputation is also going to precede you. And it could be a good one or it could be a bad one. And sometimes having no reputation is just as bad as a bad one. Every interaction that you have with someone, every email exchange, every post that you make on social media, every review, every referral, it builds or damages your reputation. And, the thing is, our real estate world can feel big, right? I don't even know how many agents there are in our local markets or, just overall, there's a lot, right? And so that feels big. But locally, it's actually quite small. And your reputation or your lack of reputation can actually impact whether your offers get accepted. It can impact your opportunities. I can't tell you how many times I would submit an offer to an agent and you've probably had this experience too. If you knew that agent, if you had done a transaction with that agent before, then you were much more likely to get your offer accepted because the agent was then able to have some confidence about working with you. They know what it's like to work with you. They know you have a reputation for getting the job done. And so they feel confident then in sharing that with their clients. Hey, I've worked with her before. Everything went really smooth. She's known for being a professional. She's known for getting the job done. And so that reputation can really benefit you. This quote from Warren Buffett, it takes 20 years to build a reputation and 5 minutes to ruin it. If you think about that, you'll do things differently. And it's so true. I think about, there's so many examples that I could give just of things that I've seen on social media just this past year. People establish themselves in one way and one comment, one thing. Think about, you guys know about the people at the Coldplay concert, right? That were on the Jumbotron and they were having this couple was having an affair and they kind of got captured on the Jumbotron. And, reputation ruined, changed in 30 seconds flat. And so that's something to think about. So the little takeaway here for you on reputation, what you're doing is impacting your reputation just as much as what you're not doing. What you aren't doing is impacting your reputation just as much as what you are doing. So think about that. Number 7, the best producers, the highest producers, they limit distractions. And focused attention, whatever it is that you're focusing your attention on, it will yield better results. If you are chasing every trend or opportunity, we love the shiny objects, right? The new marketing this, the new that, the new whatever. And when you chase everything, it tends to lead to burnout and it leads to scattered results because you're not doing enough of any particular thing to really start to get the full benefit of it. Not every strategy is for every agent. I know agents who actually love door knocking and are very good at it. That is not for me. You're not going to catch me doing that. And that's okay. I'm not right or wrong and they're not right or wrong. It's you need to know what your strengths are. Double down on that, right? If you are an amazing open house agent, you enjoy them, you're good at converting on them, then you want to double down on that. You need to be doing an open house every weekend. Or maybe you're doing 2 every weekend if you're trying to build your business and get your pipeline full. You can't get distracted by the shiny objects. It is purely a distraction that's going to negatively impact your business. And here's the other thing when it comes to this. I think a lot of times we think that, if we're not trying the new thing, then maybe we're not being innovative, right? Well, you can stay in your lane and still be innovative. You can still focus on whether it's the pillars in your business or the things that work for you and still innovate in maybe the way that you execute them or whatever that is. You need to learn to recognize the difference between trying new things and bouncing around without purpose. There was a post that I wrote last week in our Empowering Women in Real Estate community. And it was really kind of about this. I heard from a couple of people that had, we have an AI panel this afternoon, and they had gone to there were 2 big AI focused events that happened on the exact same day. Cause this is conference season. Everybody's going to things. Everybody's got events. AI is the big topic that everybody's talking about. And these people that I heard from, I definitely heard, great things, learned some great tips, but then also they felt bad. They felt bad about themselves. They left these events feeling bad. These are agents that are doing a lot of business, far more business than the people that were presenting this information. And they left feeling like they're not doing enough. They're not doing the right things. And it shouldn't be that way. It shouldn't feel that way. And in fact, I know this afternoon when you hear from the women on our AI panel, you're not going to feel that. You're going to feel inspired and very clear about what it is that they share and how they share it. You can stay in your lane, thinking about AI. I'm very clear about my business pillars. I'm very clear about the activities that I do to nurture those pillars. My activities work really well. But now I can use AI as a tool to help me to improve those activities. Like I'm not redoing everything in my entire world. I'm using the tool to improve what already works, right? Does that make sense? And so you need to kind of learn to recognize the difference between trying new things really just for the sake of trying them or, kind of bouncing around without purpose. And the thing that I've always believed is being surface level wide on a bunch of things versus being deep on a few things is a sign that you're letting comparison and shiny objects to run your life and to rob your business of stability. If you are doing a smattering, a little of this and a little of that, and you don't have enough of anything to get momentum. Pick your lane and go deep. And that is what's going to bring you stability in your business. So a question, what is one thing you've been doing that's actually a distraction? And whatever the first thing is that pops in your mind is probably the right answer. But I guarantee we all have it. There have been periods of time where I've had it. There have been things that I thought were great, I thought made sense. And, I did them consistently because that's what I do. And then I realized that it was actually a distraction and it was not something that I should continue to do. So think about that. Food for thought. Intangible number 8, treat your business like a business. You are the CEO of your life, your business, your career. Systems, boundaries, financial investment, management, marketing, all those things matter. And you are the one who controls all of those things. So whether it's tracking your income and your expenses, scheduling time blocks for prospecting, working on your business, not just in it. And that's what a lot of people do is we work just in our business and then we don't spend enough time working on it. So then you're constantly up and down. Marketing intentionally, operating with professionalism, all those things create long-term sustainability. Think about the agents that that are the top producers, the highest producers. They treat their business like a business. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to bypass joy and you can't do the things that you don't love or enjoy. It doesn't mean that you're prioritizing profits over people. It just means that you have a really clear vision for your life and for your business, and knowing what your non-negotiables are, having focus and systems for moving towards that every day. Especially I've shared a lot of this with the women that we just wrapped up our very first cohort of the Midlife Real Estate Blueprint. And we talked about this a lot. And especially the last couple of years, I have really kind of been on a journey myself about getting clear about my vision for my life, getting clear about my vision for my business. And the more clear you are about that, then the easier it is to, you're not saying yes to everything just to say yes. You know what your non-negotiables are. It gives you some focus so that you can actually start moving towards your vision and what it is that you want. And so the question I would ask you is, would you hire yourself to run your business? And I think a lot of us would probably say no. And so that is definitely something that you want to change. Number 9 is connecting the dots. I love connecting the dots. Connecting the dots is kind of seeing how things are related or relating things to each other. Understanding how one action leads to another and how, little small efforts can stack into results. Whenever I do something, I don't like to do something just one time, right? For example, in my preparation for doing this presentation for you today, I didn't do it just one time. I actually created this, 4 months ago and delivered it first to my team to see, okay, does this flow well? Is this something that's interesting? What's the feedback? So not just one presentation, but now a presentation for my team. I also, in practicing for this, I record myself going through the presentation. That then becomes a podcast episode, right? So kind of, taking one thing and using it in multiple different ways, it will ultimately become social media content at some point. And all of those things start to kind of connect the dots. You can also kind of bringing things, connecting them together, right? Practically anything you do in your business can and should be connected. So think about this. Somebody contacts you from your sign, right, at a listing, or maybe your postcard. So you're not just going to have that conversation with them. You're going to kind of go through and you're sort of going to connect the dots, right? You're going to add them to your database, and then you're going to send them a note or pop by, right? That's the next step. And then because they're in your database, now they're going to get your email newsletter. And so then it all just the dots just start to connect. It's not just one thing and then it's done. It connects. Same thing with geographic farming. Geographic farming is a huge pillar in my real estate business. And if you are somebody who is doing a lot of geographic farming, or you just want to do more business in your community, focus on promoting everything related to your town or community. Posting about the local restaurants. And it doesn't have to be that you're posting about it to promote it, but you probably enjoy the businesses and the things that are near where you live. So when you go to the coffee shop, do a quick little story and tag connect the dots that you're a local business person that cares about local businesses. And this will take you so far. There's been, I've heard lots of sayings, and I'm sure you've heard them too, when it comes to marketing and conversion, that people need to see you. I've heard everything from 8 times to 17 times before they actually will pick up the phone and call you or want to work with you. And you can't do that if you're just doing one-off things. But when you can connect the dots, they get your postcard, they see you on social media, they see your sign in the neighborhood, they see you on the banner at the elementary school, that, it kind of connects the dots, and then it all starts to make sense, and then it's very clear that they're going to reach out to you. Somebody is not likely to remember you from one interaction. They're not likely to. This is why I think a lot of agents struggle with geographic farming and postcards, because they don't do it consistently enough and they don't do enough other things around it. They're not going to remember you from getting one postcard. They're not going to remember you from one interaction. But when you can link that interaction to another, and then another, and then another, that is connecting the dots, and it makes all the difference. And then our last piece, our last intangible, is authenticity. So think about the people that are the most successful. When I think about whether it's realtors or it's other entrepreneurs or business owners or business leaders, they are authentic. They are true to who they are. And being true to who you are in your message, in your approach, in your presence, you can tell when someone is faking it. When someone is not being authentic, it's like there's a little wall between you and them because they're holding back because they're not being authentic. And people can feel that. And that makes a difference in how they feel when they're around you. If they don't feel good when they're around you, they're not going to want to work with you. And, the truth is, and I think especially now, I was listening to a podcast recently with Gary Vee, and he was talking about AI and all those things and, all great things. But because of all of this, people, I think, want more connection than ever. You can't necessarily believe what you see online anymore. You don't know, is that a real picture? Is that a real video? Are the facts presented true? Like, it's hard to know. And the more time you spend in front of a computer or on a phone, you tend to kind of want that connection, that human connection. And authenticity allows you to build trust, and it allows you to build lasting relationships. When I think about the people that I have had relationships with that maybe were not successful or were not as long lasting, it's typically because it was an authenticity issue in there somewhere. What they brought to the relationship was not authentic to them, or what I brought to the relationship was not authentic to me. And at some point that doesn't feel good, and it's just not going to be able to continue. True success truly comes from being you, not a watered down version of someone else. And here's a little important caveat on that. This does not mean that you can't or won't do business with people who aren't exactly like you. There were so many people that I worked with that were not exactly like me. And in fact, sometimes there's some value there. But being authentically you while being a professional, a lot of the things that we've talked about today, then you're able to bridge that gap. So I would just wrap this up by saying that the more you embrace your true self, the more you're going to attract aligned people and opportunities. When you are not being yourself, people don't know how to connect with you because they can't find a connection point, right? But when you are authentically you, then other people will respond to that and they're going to be attracted to you. So just to summarize this up, the 10 intangibles are speed, networking community, being direct and clear, consistency, setting expectations, reputation, limit distractions, treat your business like a business, connect the dots, and authenticity. And if you can master these, I promise you, even if it's not all of them, if you can just master some of these, you will take your business to a whole new level. So as we kind of wrap this up, I would like, let's have a little conversation about this. Is there an intangible? What is an intangible that you have noticed in another agent that you admire that I did not include on the list? What intangible is there an intangible that you will focus on improving? What's one thing that you will do differently having heard this information? And does anybody else have any other questions about this?
Thank you for listening to Empowering Women in Real Estate, the podcast. Click subscribe to be notified every Wednesday when our latest episode is released, and be sure to check out our group on Facebook.